Thank you for becoming a member of the Maryland 10th Cavalry Gun Club or a member of one of the other 28 associated clubs of the AGC. All new members of associated clubs at the AGC must complete a range safety orientation prior to being eligible to purchase a range badge. This presentation will guide you through the range rules and how they apply to all members and guests. At the conclusion of this presentation, you will be issued an affidavit that will certify that you have completed the range safety orientation, confirming your eligibility to purchase a range badge. The AGC operates on the following schedule: weekdays 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or sunset, whichever comes first. Weekends 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. or sunset, whichever comes first. Ranges are open every day except on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. The range closes at 2 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. There are some exceptions to the above schedule. The trap range may remain open until 9 p.m. on Wednesdays. The 50-yard range may remain open until 9 p.m. on Tuesdays for club-sanctioned league events. Range safety officers may close the range if lightning, poor visibility, or other weather-related conditions pose a danger. Any range may be closed to non-competitors during an AGC-sanctioned event. Scheduled range closures are posted on the events calendar on the AGC website. The Range Safety Officer. The AGC has at least one staffed range safety officer on duty every day. The range safety officers, most commonly referred to as RSOs, are responsible for enforcing all safety rules at the AGC to create a safe, comfortable environment for all members. The decisions of the RSOs are final. Any decision or action of an RSO may be brought before the AGC Executive Committee and Board of Trustees. The RSOs may demand that any shooter immediately stop shooting their firearm if it represents a danger to individuals or to property. The RSOs reserve the right, weather permitting, to ask the shooters to step off the concrete pad during a ceasefire. RSOs are authorized to relocate shooters whose shooting activity causes multiple complaints from adjacent shooters to another point on the firing line. Following are safety guidelines that are strictly enforced at the AGC. Pets. Pets shall be accompanied by their owner, leashed and controlled at all times. Pets are not allowed on the concrete pad. Alcohol consumption while at the AGC. Alcohol consumption is not permitted in the vicinity of an active range. Alcohol may be consumed only after shooting is completed and firearms have been secured. Alcohol should not be consumed in the areas that are visible from public roads. Anyone who appears to be intoxicated or under the influence of drugs will not be allowed on AGC property. All firearms being brought to or transported on range property must be unloaded. All uncased firearms transported on range property must have an empty chamber indicator, most commonly referred to as an ECI. The ECI must be placed in the breech of the firearm where applicable, and the firearm must be carried muzzle up. ECIs come in a variety of shapes and are usually brightly colored for their visibility. Here we have an example of placing ECIs in different types of firearms. You will be asked to place your ECI in your firearm during a ceasefire. Example of placing an ECI, also known as an empty cartridge indicator, into the breech of a firearm. This shows that the chamber is empty and there is no cartridge inside of the firearm. Holstered firearms may not be worn except under applicable Maryland law and at AGC trustee approved events. Cased and uncased firearms may be transported to or from the rack area located behind the concrete pad at any time. Firearms, cased or uncased, may not be brought on or from the concrete pad during a ceasefire. Uncased firearms must be carried with ECI in place where applicable, with the muzzle pointed up. When on the concrete pad, firearms shall remain pointed downrange while being cased or uncased. All rifle cases shall remain pointed downrange while on the concrete pad. It is recommended that cases be stored off the pad when possible. Always keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction. Firearms should always be pointed downrange when on the concrete pad and pointed up when carrying to or from the concrete pad. Always keep your firearm unloaded until ready to shoot. On AGC ranges, firearms are considered loaded when the following apply. It's considered loaded when an empty chamber indicator, an ECI, is not in place. It's considered loaded when actions, cylinders, or loading gates are closed. Cap and ball revolver actions do not have to meet this specific requirement. It's considered loaded when cartridges or empty cases are in the chamber or the cylinder, or when the magazine is attached. Black powder firearms are considered loaded when they contain propellant, projectile, cap, or powder in the pan of a flintlock. Always keep your finger off the trigger until ready to fire. Always know what is beyond your target. It is highly recommended that eye and hearing protection be worn at all times on or near the firing line. Individuals assume all responsibility for any injury that occurs while not wearing eye and hearing protection. Ceasefires are called each time the range must be made safe to allow shooters to go down range to pull or post targets. Ceasefires may also be called immediately if there is a situation that risks the safety of shooters. The following ceasefire rules must be observed on all ranges. Do not handle any firearms during a ceasefire. A ceasefire is in effect from the moment it is last called for the day until the range is called hot the following morning. During a ceasefire, all firearms must be pointed downrange or racked in an upright position with actions open and ECIs in place. During a ceasefire, please stay behind the white line when not pulling or posting your targets. Ceasefires normally occur on the hour and half hour. When multiple shooters are self-governing on the line, they shall follow the same ceasefire commands and procedures as staff RSOs. Upon mutual agreement, they may adjust the frequency of ceasefires. Next, we'll go over the rules that apply to each of the 7 ranges at the AGC. We'll begin with the 50-yard, 58-lane handgun-only range. Firearms that use cartridge, cap and ball, and flintlock are permitted on this range. However, shot shells are not permitted on the pistol range. This range is designated only for shooting handguns, unless a special event is approved by the AGC trustees. The firing from a prone, a Creedmoor, or a sitting position is prohibited. When AGC metal frames are used, only a single centered target is allowed. This is to reduce the chances of bullets ricocheting off the metal. Muzzle loading handguns must use a loading stand or similar device during a ceasefire. The stand must keep the muzzle in an upright position. There are 2 additional berms, referred to as protective berms, which are not intended to receive fired rounds. Next, we will visit the 100-yard multi-purpose range, which is also known as the Barnes Range. Rifles, handguns, and shotguns are permitted on this range. 10 rightmost lanes are reserved for bench rest only shooting. No other positions, such as standing, kneeling, sitting, prone, or Creedmoor, are permitted in the bench rest only lanes. These positions are permitted in all other lanes on the Barnes Range. Lanes to the left of lane 57, clearly marked with orange columns, are open only at the discretion of the RSO. All shooters should occupy lanes to the right of the orange columns unless directed by the RSO. Next, we will visit the 200-yard range or long distance range. This range is intended for the use of high-powered rifles. However, handguns and shotguns using cartridge, cap and ball, or flintlock are permitted. 50, 100, and 150 meter impact areas are for the exclusive use of shooting steel silhouettes, with silhouettes or hunting handguns only. The 200-yard impact berm is the primary impact berm used for all 200-yard shooting. In addition, it serves as the 200-meter impact berm for silhouette or hunting handgun shoots and practice. All targets must be placed at 200 yards or beyond. Targets should never be placed ahead of the pit. Ceasefire rules on the pistol range also apply on the 200-yard range. After calling a ceasefire and before going down range, an orange flag must be posted in the flagpole. Firearms must not be handled when the orange flag is in the flagpole. If you arrive at the 200-yard range and there is a flag in the flagpole, you must walk down range to ensure that no one is in the pit prior to removing the flag and calling the line hot. People may stay in the pit between ceasefires only during organized shoots and under the control of a designated match director. People in the pit must be able to electronically communicate by voice with the match director from within the pit. When using the AGC target frames, the center of the target bullseye must not be less than 24 inches from the frame side members. Next, we will visit the trap ranges. Absolutely no slugs may be fired on this range. Only shotguns firing a maximum powder load of 3 dram equivalent, shot size 7.5, 8, or 9, and a maximum muzzle velocity of 1,200 feet per second are allowed. Specifications on shotgun ammunition is almost always marked on the packaging. Please make sure that your ammunition meets these specifications prior to using them on the trap range. Firearms shall remain unloaded with actions open at all times until all shooters are on station and ready to shoot. Break open shotguns are exempted from having to be opened when racked, but must remain unloaded when not on the firing line. ECIs are optional on this range only. No shooting is permitted in front of the 16-yard line, the furthest most position on the concrete pad. When shooting handicaps, shooters may shoot from a staggered position not to exceed 2 yards. It is permitted to walk forward of the 16-yard line to the trap house only, as long as the field is clear. This means that shooters may be on the line with unloaded guns and open actions. Trap fields are run independently of each other. The trap house may be approached after the field is clear while the other trap fields are in use. When a person is in a trap house, an orange safety cone must be placed in a visible position on top of the trap house. Firearms used in all trap events must be fired from the shoulder. Folding stocks must be in the extended position. Pistol grip shotguns are not permitted for trap shooting. Trap range rules are visibly displayed on a sign adjacent to the trap range itself. We will now visit the shotgun patterning range. This range is for patterning only. It is not intended for practice shooting. No slugs may be fired on this range. When approaching the patterning range, always be aware of the shooting activity on the adjacent archery range. Verbal communication must be established with archers, and the archery range must be made safe prior to crossing the archery range. Prior to shooting, an orange cone and flag must be positioned in a visible location to indicate that the patterning range is being used. Shooters supplied paper or paper purchased from the AGC may be used on the patterning frame. We will now visit the archery range. Sky drawing is not allowed. Sky drawing is the practice of drawing the bow back while aiming above the target before lowering the aim point down onto the target. All of the relevant range rules are applicable by substituting archery terminology. Only field point or target arrows may be shot at AGC targets. Absolutely no broadheads are allowed. Prior to shooting, you must position an orange cone and flag in a visible location to indicate that the archery range is being used. Archers shall designate a common firing line. Archers must be parallel to each other when shooting. This orientation will now conclude with our final indoor pellet range. When using your pellet firearm, all firearm safety rules will apply. Pellet range is available for club use from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. on any day the range is open. In compressed air, carbon dioxide, and spring-powered guns firing .177 or .22 caliber blunt nose lead pellets weighing less than 25 grains may be fired on this range. Pointed hunting pellets are not allowed. The maximum allowable velocity is 1,000 feet per second for 1.77 pellets and 800 feet per second for .22 pellets. Only paper targets or AGC approved metal or metal clad targets may be used. All shooters must be aligned properly with their pellet traps. This now concludes our safety orientation. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask an experienced club member or range safety officer.